The night Daniel Carter carried his drunk boss out of a police station, he thought he was carrying his own dignity out with her. Rain poured over the city like a curtain trying to hide what had happened. Neon lights flickered on wet pavement, and Daniel stood there in his worn-out jacket, holding the arm of the woman who signed his paychecks. Her heels were in her hand, her mascara smudged, her confidence gone. If anyone from the office had seen them, rumors would have spread like wildfire by morning. But the streets were empty, and the only witnesses were the raindrops and Daniel's racing heart. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing the right thing even when no one is watching, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that small acts can change lives. Daniel hadn't planned to be at that police station. He had planned to be home, helping his 6-year-old daughter Lily finish her homework, making her favorite grilled cheese sandwich, and reading her a bedtime story about brave knights and kind queens. But life rarely follows plans when you're a single father living paycheck to paycheck. He had received the call at 10:17 p.m. An unknown number. He almost ignored it, thinking it might be another bill collector. But something made him answer. It was a police officer, calm, professional, informing him that his boss, Rebecca Hayes, had been involved in a minor incident outside an upscale bar. Nothing criminal, but enough to cause embarrassment. She was too intoxicated to drive, and somehow, in her blurred state, she had insisted on calling the only employee whose number she had memorized, Daniel's. Daniel didn't know whether to feel honored or humiliated. Rebecca Hayes was known in the company as sharp, distant, and intimidating. As the CEO of Hayes Marketing Group, she commanded respect with a single look. She was always dressed in crisp suits, hair perfectly styled, voice steady and controlled. She barely knew Daniel beyond his employee ID and quarterly performance reviews. He was a mid-level analyst too efficient, quiet, invisible. And yet that night, in a moment of vulnerability, she had called him. Daniel almost said number. He almost told the officer he couldn't come. He had Lily asleep at home, and no one else to watch her. But he remembered the fear in the officer's voice when he mentioned towing the car and filing a report. A report could spiral into headlines. Headlines could ruin reputations. So Daniel wrapped Lily in her pink blanket, carried her gently to the car without waking her, and drove across town in the pouring rain. When he arrived, he saw Rebecca sitting on a bench inside the station, staring at the floor like a lost child. Her confidence was gone. She looked smaller, somehow human. He handled the paperwork quietly, paid the minor fees from his already tight savings, helped her into his car while shielding her from photographers who had started to gather outside the bar. He didn't ask questions. He didn't lecture her. He simply did what needed to be done. On the drive, she fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head tilted against the window. Daniel glanced at her, wondering how someone so powerful could look so fragile. He dropped her off at her luxury condo, made sure she got inside safely with the help of her building's concierge, and then drove home, exhausted. He expected nothing from it. In fact, he expected the opposite. He imagined walking into work the next morning and being met with cold eyes, perhaps even a warning to never speak of the incident. He assumed she would pretend it never happened, because that's what powerful people did. The next morning, Daniel woke up to the sound of Lily coughing. Her asthma had been acting up again. He sat beside her bed, gently rubbing her back, feeling the weight of everything pressing on his shoulders. Medical bills, rent, school supplies, the car payment. He had taken money from his emergency fund to help Rebecca the night before. That fund was already thin. He kissed Lily's forehead and promised her he'd be back before dinner. She smiled weakly, trusting him completely. That trust was both his strength and his fear. At the office, whispers buzzed through the hallways. A rumor had already started about Rebecca being seen at a bar. Daniel kept his head down. He focused on his spreadsheets, pretending his heart wasn't pounding every time footsteps approached. Around noon, an email arrived, a company-wide message from Rebecca Hayes. She thanked the team for their hard work during a challenging quarter. She mentioned resilience, accountability, and leadership. There was no hint of last night, no vulnerability, just the polished tone everyone knew. Daniel felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Then, at 1:03 p.m., he received another email. This one was direct from her. She asked him to come to her office. His palms turned cold. He imagined the worst. Maybe she regretted calling him. Maybe she wanted to ensure his silence. Maybe she felt embarrassed and angry at the only witness to her weakness. When he stepped into her office, she wasn't behind her desk. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. She turned slowly. Her face wasn't cold. It wasn't distant. It was serious, yes, but softer than he had ever seen it. She didn't pretend to forget. Instead of dismissing him, she thanked him. Not in the corporate way she thanked teams in meetings, but personally, directly. She acknowledged that he had stepped in when she was at her lowest. She admitted she had been overwhelmed by stress, by pressure, by a recent divorce that no one in the company knew about. Daniel listened quietly, unsure how to respond. She told him she remembered everything. The rain, the way he shielded her from cameras, the fact that he had a sleeping child in the back seat and still chose to help her. She said she had never felt so exposed and so grateful at the same time. Then she asked him something unexpected. Why had he come? He hesitated before answering honestly. He said he believed that when someone is in trouble, you show up, no matter who they are. Rebecca studied him as if seeing him for the first time. Over the next few weeks, subtle changes began to happen. Daniel wasn't suddenly promoted. There was no dramatic announcement. But Rebecca started inviting him to strategy meetings. She asked for his opinions and actually listened. She reviewed his past projects and realized how often his ideas had been overlooked. Meanwhile, at home, Lily's health took a turn for the worse. One night, Daniel rushed her to the emergency room after a severe asthma attack. Sitting in the hospital corridor, watching doctors work on his little girl, he felt completely alone. He had always tried to separate work and personal life. But exhaustion doesn't respect boundaries. The next morning, he showed up late to the office, eyes red, shirt wrinkled. He expected criticism. Instead, he found Rebecca waiting outside his cubicle. She had somehow heard about Lily, maybe from HR, maybe from his tired expression the day before. She didn't ask for details in front of others. She simply told him to take the week off, fully paid. Daniel was stunned. He tried to refuse, thinking of deadlines and responsibilities. But she insisted. She said family came first. She said she had learned that lesson the hard way. That week changed everything. Rebecca personally ensured that Daniel's projects were covered. She even arranged for the company's health benefits advisor to review Lily's medical plan, helping Daniel access better coverage he hadn't known he qualified for. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like he could breathe. One evening, as he sat by Lily's hospital bed, watching her finally sleep peacefully after days of treatment, his phone buzzed. It was a short message from Rebecca. She hoped Lily was feeling better. She said she was rooting for her. Daniel realized something profound. Kindness had moved in a circle. He had stepped in for her. Now she was stepping in for him. Back at the office, months later, Rebecca announced a new leadership initiative focused on employee well-being and growth. She spoke openly about mistakes, about burnout, about the importance of community within a company. She never shared details of that rainy night, but Daniel knew it had changed her. During the annual review season, Daniel was called into her office again. This time, she sat behind her desk, but her eyes carried that same softness. She offered him a promotion to senior strategy manager, a significant raise, flexible hours to accommodate Lily's needs. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had spent years believing he was invisible, just another employee trying to survive. But in one unexpected night, by choosing compassion over convenience, he had rewritten his own story. The real change, though, wasn't the title or the salary. It was the environment. Rebecca began mentoring young employees personally. She created support programs for single parents in the company. She encouraged mental health days without stigma. And Daniel saw the ripple effect. People started helping each other more. The office felt less like a battlefield and more like a team. One afternoon, months later, Daniel and Rebecca found themselves alone in the conference room after a long meeting. The city outside glowed under a clear sky so different from that stormy night. She admitted that if he hadn't come that night, her life might have taken a darker path. The scandal could have exploded. Her reputation could have shattered. More than that, she might have continued down a road of isolation and pride. Daniel smiled quietly, thinking about how close he had come to ignoring that call. Sometimes, the smallest decisions hold the greatest power. As years passed, Lily grew healthier and stronger. She once visited Daniel's office for a Bring Your Child to Work day. Rebecca greeted her warmly, kneeling to her level, telling her how brave her father was. Lily beamed with pride. Daniel realized that the real reward wasn't money or recognition. It was the example he was setting for his daughter, showing her that kindness isn't weakness, that integrity matters even when no one is applauding. Now, before this story ends, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that even in your hardest moments you can choose compassion, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more stories that restore faith in humanity. And before the final lines, I have a special request. Comment the word kindness below if you believe one small act can change an entire life, because it can. On a rainy night, a single dad chose to show up. He didn't do it for promotion. He didn't do it for praise. He did it because someone needed help. And the next day, she didn't pretend to forget. Instead, she remembered. She changed. And together, they proved that sometimes, the most powerful leadership lesson begins not in a boardroom but in a storm, under neon lights. When one human being decides to carry another through the rain,